This is Break the Case with Jennifer Coffindaffer. Inside the evidence, behind the headlines, from someone who's been there. Here now, Jennifer Coffindaffer.
Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. Had to come to you live after breaking news on two different fronts. Let me first talk about Luigi Mangione. A lot of people are upset right now. They're saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe they dropped the murder one charge, which was based on him committing a terroristic event or a terroristic attack when he shot Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, in the back. So that was always an overcharge. For anyone who follows this channel, we talked about that a long time ago. It first of all, didn't make a lot of sense that they didn't just let the feds run with this, but I understand it's New York and they wanted to, charge. Break the Case. I'm your host. I'm Jen Coffindaffer. Had to come to you live after breaking news on two different fronts. Let me first talk about Luigi Mangione. A lot of people are upset right now. They're saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe they dropped the murder one charge, which was based on him committing a terroristic event or a terroristic attack when he shot Brian Thompson, the CEO of United Healthcare, in the back. So that was always an overcharge. For anyone who follows this channel, we talked about that a long time ago. It first of all, didn't make a lot of sense that they didn't just let the feds run with this, but I understand it's New York and they wanted to, charge, but it was always an overcharge. Second degree murder perfectly fit under New York statute. New York statute is so different from the other statutes or from the other states in terms of murder one. In terms of it's who you kill that makes it a first degree murder offense in New York, as opposed to premeditation. The other way that they tried to sneak in on it was saying that it was a terroristic act. Come on. It was a cowardice in the back act. There was no huge terrorism event, which usually is marked by panic, by causing a mass transit event or an event in a public area where people are around and you do a shooting there. There was no, in my opinion, terroristic nexus to what Luigi Mangione did. And remember, everybody who's upset saying, oh my gosh, is this how we deal with victims? Is this, how we deal with murderers? Listen, he's been charged federally with murder. They've already put the death penalty on the table. He is toast if he's convicted. So, and federal authorities, that's, it's going to be an amazing federal case. He crossed state lines to commit the murder. It well falls within federal jurisdiction. In my opinion, it always should have just been federal jurisdiction. But New York did charge. They overcharged. The first degree was thrown out. Second degree remains. And that's what's appropriate. That's my opinion on that. It's pretty clear when you read the New York statute that they were always reaching. I wish they wouldn't have, but they did. Okay, let's move on, though, to what happened today regarding Tyler Robinson's case, particularly the shooter of Charlie Kirk. I have been in training for 4 days, Thursday through Sunday. And so just getting back on Monday, still not caught up. So I'm sorry I didn't do my normal Monday live, but I wanted to come to you now today to talk about all the latest developments in Charlie Kirk, in the Charlie Kirk case. First of all, I want to just preface this by, when we think of Charlie Kirk, some people, with certain philosophies and so forth, demonize him as being, this rightist advocate. Other people on the right, deem him as being, somebody who really reached the younger generation in the political conservative views. No matter what your viewpoint is, this is where I'm coming from. We cannot have people assassinated for their public beliefs, for espousing their opinions and beliefs and trying to get discourse going between people who don't have the same philosophies. I loved one of the things he said, and that was, when you stop talking about issues you don't agree on, that's when violence happens. And isn't that, I mean, it couldn't have been said more perfectly. Tyler Robinson, and we're going to go over all the new evidence against him, but Tyler Robinson was not interested in talking about anything. He said he hated him so much, and that basically he felt that Charlie was about hate, and because of that, something had to be done, and there was nothing else that, I guess, in his opinion, could be done other than murdering him. So in any event, we all should be concerned, no matter what side you're on, because you cannot have people murdered for that. I mean, this was a father, this was a brother, a son, a husband. It's really terrible that it just is mind-boggling that people don't understand the human side of this. By the way, I'm not crying, but I have this horrible allergy in my eyes ever since I got back. I don't know, maybe up in Montana, I didn't have the allergies, and then I got them when I came back, but sorry. So I just didn't want you all to think I'm crying. I am not in the mood to cry. I am in the mood to advocate, and I'm the mood to be, I'm angry about what is happening and what I'm seeing on social media. And I just hope to keep the focus in on all of us should be able to have the right to speak views without worrying about getting murdered. All right. First of all, the person who gave the press conference today was Jeff Gray. He's the county attorney. So for those of you who followed, for instance, the Idaho 4 case, Thompson was that county attorney. Let me tell you, though, this Jeff Gray, older gentleman, I bet you he's in his 60s at least. This guy, I can already tell he's good. He's to the point. I was actually surprised at all the evidence he gave us today, but he knows that his state, Utah, is a preliminary hearing state. And we're going to talk more about that so you all understand the difference between indictment, informations, grand juries, criminal complaints. I'm going to quickly go over all of that. But he came forward and he essentially said how they are charging this case is by information. In fact, he said he's filed the information, so it's done. He filed an information. What's an information? That is something the attorney writes up that specifically outlines the probable cause and the reasoning behind a charge. And a criminal complaint, just to let you know, criminal complaints are also used to obtain arrest warrants. That's when the FBI agent or the law enforcement officer, they write and swear before a judge to a particular criminal complaint, which is their summation of the charges, of the evidence that support a charge against somebody. The third way is an indictment, and that's where the prosecutor goes before a grand jury. He puts on witnesses, and then that panel, the grand jurors, they ask questions. They act like the defense attorneys. You're getting pummeled from all these different people. It always irritates me when defense attorneys, for instance, say you can indict a ham sandwich and negate the purpose of a grand jury as being important. That's rubbish. They've never been there. They've never been before a grand jury because defense attorneys aren't allowed, and that irritates a lot of people. But the bottom line is you have all these grand jury members who are like jurors in a regular trial. They're, you and me and everybody else, and they have questions. They're not just sitting there. Some sit there and knit and others read the paper, but the ones that are really engaged are hammering you with questions about what you have to say and about the facts. So it's sort of like having, a dozen or so defense attorneys that are thinking and looking at evidence rather than one. So actually, it can be quite challenging. And there are many instances where a no bill is not achieved, and many instances where it never even gets asked whether there's going to be a true bill or no bill. But nevertheless, that's not how this case was charged. There will be no grand jury in this case. This was done by information That was filed, and then next scheduled after an arraignment will be a preliminary hearing. And in that preliminary hearing, the government is going to put on a mini case, and just enough to show probable cause. The defense attorney can ask questions. The defense attorney can ask questions, I should say, of the witnesses, if any, and there will be witnesses put up on the stand. And that's how that works. And then a judge will say, listen, prosecutor, I think you have enough probable cause to continue with charges, or no, there's just not enough here. And they won't allow the charges to be filed. So that's how it works. That's where we're at. Okay, let's go on. So Jeff Gray really spelled out. I liked how he started the whole thing. He's talked about a little bit what I think so many of us are worried about, and that is at the crux of us as a society, of a republic, under what our Constitution vies for, is the right to free speech, of free expression and exchanging of ideas. And the idea that somebody can be, sitting in a tent, literally seated at a tent, and addressing a question asked would be assassinated. It should have everybody shaking in our boots. We are not a third world country. We're not South America. I mean, this, to me, what we're experiencing seems to be some weird Twilight Zone blowback to the 1960s. That's how it feels. Martin Luther King, let's assassinate him because we don't agree. All the different violent incidents that happened because really civil rights, that was at the crux of everything. And many Americans, wanting to keep everything the way it was. And the civil rights movement saying, listen, the way it was wrong. We have to change. And so it's just terrible, I think, for me as a citizen, and I'm sure many of you, to watch what happened to Charlie Kirk in that light, in the huge, big picture of what this means for us as a society if people continue to have to worry about being mowed down because of what they have to say. Okay, I'm going to get onto the charges, though. That's the philosophy, but let's go with the charges. He did talk about what I just talked about as well. Criminal information. So on the information, there were 7 charges against Tyler Robinson. Number 1, aggravated murder. And so murder 1. And so specifically, you might be asking, well, what were the aggravating factors? Well, the aggravating factors he pointed out were the fact that many people could have been harmed. They were in harm's way during the commission of this murder, right? It was a public place. He was shooting from about 150 yards away. And obviously, just like in the case of Trump's attempted assassination, you'll recall one person was murdered. Another person was severely injured. And so when you look at all of that, you see, that lines up with their statute of why this would be an aggravating factor. Also, the fact that children had to witness this. There were children there. It was horrible that this crime, this assassination, took place in front of little ones. Number 2, he was charged with felony discharging of a firearm. Number 3, obstruction of justice. There were 2 obstruction of justice charges. One had to do with, both had to do with his lover. Remember, he was a gay man and had a lover, his roommate, who was transitioning to be a woman, but who was a man, is a man. And he told him to not speak to authorities if they came and questioned him. And he also said to erase their text messages, because their text messages, which of course you can't really erase them. I mean, a good forensic staff with the FBI is going to find them, and they did find them. And so, and they read through them, and wow, very, very eye-opening. Okay, number 4, 2 charges related to him disposing of his clothing. So when he went back there in that wooded area and disposed of the gun in the towel, dropped everything there. He also disposed of his clothing. He changed clothes, which I guess made it more difficult, as he says, he told his roommate in this messaging and back and forth that he had really no way to get it out. He said there was one marked car that kept him from going in. He said they had already searched, which I thought was interesting. So somebody had possibly searched there that was law enforcement, and they just missed it, wrapped up in the towel. And so he thought he was going to have a chance to retrieve that. But one marked cruiser stayed around to the point where he felt like he couldn't go back in and retrieve it. But he changed his clothes in there, apparently, and then took off. I think he would have put the other clothes in his backpack, because we see him on the video, the TMZ video, we see him with a backpack. Yes, we do, when he's fleeing across. The first part of the TMZ video is when he's limping his way forward, right? Because it's believed that the gun was in his jeans. I think I shared with you when I was in Montana, I put a rifle down my pants. And I was able to walk much better than he walked, but I believe it was slipping, or maybe he just, was running faster than I was trying to run when I was replicating it. But nevertheless, it appears that the reason he had that crazy pronounced limp when he was going to the scene was he was trying to conceal that weapon in his pants. Okay, and the other obstruction charge, so one was for getting rid of the clothing, and the other was for getting rid of the gun, right? He didn't leave the gun on the roof. He took it and he tried to hide it and conceal it in that wooded area right there on campus. So in any event, those were the two charges concerning obstruction. All right, number 5. So we have, just to go over, aggravated murder, felony discharge of a weapon, obstruction in count 3, obstruction in count 4, for those two reasons I said. One was about concealing the weapon, the other was disposing of the clothing. Now we're on to number 5. Number 5 and 6 were both those witness tampering charges. I talked about those just a second ago, but just to repeat, that was because he told his lover to delete messages and his lover not to cooperate. And then finally, number 7, and that was commission of a violent action in front of kids. And I believe that was a very much of a lesser charge. Again, whenever you have a crime like this, and they call it the top charge is the murder charge, you're supposed to include lesser and included violations. You don't just get off without charging those. So they charged those as well, which makes a lot of sense. All right. He says he will file the notice to seek the death penalty. Days ago, when I did a live, and then I also have been tweeting about this for, since it happened, and particularly up until the time of his arrest, just a lot of tweets about this, keep everybody up to speed. But I said, they're going to seek the death penalty. Then the governor said they're going to seek the death penalty. And then now the prosecutor says they're going to seek the death penalty. So for everyone who, for some reason, I don't really understand this, thinks that they are not going to seek the death penalty, of course they're going to seek the death penalty. It was an assassination. The evidence they have is overwhelming already. And we're just, a week into this investigation. Wednesday, I believe, is when this happened. It's been a week, not even a week. And the case will continue and continue to build and get stronger and stronger. But it's already very strong, in my opinion. I can't wait to, let you all listen to the evidence and see what you think. All right. Again, he talks about a bolt action 30-06 rifle. It was retrieved from a wooded area, so they have the rifle. Number 2, Tyler Robinson surrendered to the sheriff's office. I want to get into a little bit of detail so nobody's confused about what happened. The mom saw the video footage that was in the news media. Again, I know there's been a lot of conversation about, well, it was facial recognition that really caught him. That's not accurate. If they knew and identified who he was through facial recognition, they would have never released all that to the public. In fact, that's exactly what was said to the public by, I believe it was the SAC Salt Lake. He said, listen, and I think Kash Patel said this too, don't hold me to it. It might have just been the SAC. But they said, listen, we're not going to release that right now, his picture. Remember, they didn't release it right away because we have investigative methods we're using. Well, and they did. And I think they probably had it narrowed down to, some cadre of people, but they didn't have him pegged, or they never would have released that picture. That's what you do from somebody who's been on this side of the table. That's what you do when you are in a situation where you imminently need to get information out to the public because you need their help in identifying. The minute you exhaust or it's not going fast enough, you release information so that the public can help you, because the public is the best source of finding people. Obviously, now you have millions of people looking instead of just law enforcement. All right. So his mom recognizes him. His mom calls him and says, where are you at? He says, I'm homesick. And then he said, well, she questioned him kind of about an alibi. Where are you at? What are you doing? And then she's not convinced. So then she says something to her husband. Her husband looks at the video. He says, oh my gosh. Yeah. And they both the parents, listen, we as parents, it might have been grainy. It might not have been perfect photo, but it was good enough. You would know if this was your son. And they also said the mother gave information and said he's been acting, he's really turned very liberal in his views, radical, doesn't like Charlie Kirk. I mean, they offered up a lot of information, the father and the mother, talking about how his ideology had really turned. Remember, the father apparently was MAGA. That's what came out in this press conference as well. The father was MAGA and was concerned about this liberal turn of their son and the fact he was dating a person transitioning. They talk about that the parents, there was a point at which he became angry about ideology that he believed was against transgender people. And so the parents were worried about him being radical about his views in this regard. Okay. At 11:51, that's when Robinson entered campus. Okay. He had, obviously, we've seen the black T-shirt with the American flag. There's a little eagle. He has on a darker baseball cap. He has on jeans. Remember in that TMZ video, the limp that he showed, likely concealing in some way that rifle. Let's see. He described it as walking with an unusual gait. Again, that will be shown. A jury can make their own decisions because the only one that really knows if he had that rifle secreted, the only one that really knows is Tyler Robinson. But you can bet the FBI is going to take that film from TMZ, or from, I shouldn't say from TMZ, from the Ring camera, because I guarantee they got it from, the owner as well. And they are going to enhance it. And by enhance doesn't mean add to. What we mean when we say we send it to the lab for enhancement, they're going to take that and dig in on the pixelations, and they're going to get it just dialed in more clearly. And I already, when I was watching it, the 200th time that I've watched it, you can sort of see this indention. It's really not an indention. It's a protrusion that would seem possibly to be part of maybe the receiver part of the rifle. But nevertheless, it's pretty obvious. I think an FBI agent would be able to get on that stand, and after evaluating more closely the video imaging they have, be able to make their assessment, if this is their assessment, that indeed was a rifle that was secreted when he was running. Okay, then he continued onto campus, and how he got up on that roof. This was interesting. they talked about a railing, it being very easy to be in a walkway railing area, that he jumps the railing and jumps onto this rooftop. And they made it sound like they have partial video of all this, but that he, meaning the prosecutor, and that's who I'm talking from the lens of, the prosecutor saying all this in this press conference, it seems like that for a while he wasn't on camera. So there's some issue with the camera angles and then another set of camera angles. And there was a time that he wasn't on that. It's a short time seemingly between going from the railing, getting on the roof, and then running across. But also realize there's going to be so much more video. I've already seen a video. Some of you guys may be seeing. You can hear somebody saying, is there somebody up there on the roof? This is such a kickback. It reminds me so much of what happened in the attempted assassination of Donald Trump, where everybody's kind of noticing this guy up on the roof, except for who? The 6 law enforcement officers on this case, on this detail for Charlie Kirk and Charlie Kirk's own staff. No one checked the roofs. I've said it before. I don't want to beat it to death, but it's 101 in personal protective detail. You have to check the roofs. You have to have somebody on the highest high ground looking down on the lowest to make sure nobody's getting on a roof, because that's where you make these shots, and that's why these shots can be successful. All right, continuing on with what he had to say. After the shot is fired, which he puts into succession, a question asked. Now, I've watched that video multiple times. It's very distressing, but for me, I thought it was very important for me to understand exactly where that shot hit, exactly what Charlie's body did after the shot was hit, exactly what happened around that shot in terms of, how many people might be involved. I wanted to understand the line of sight. So I've watched it many times, and I believe, to the best of my recollection, that what was asked, there was some transgender questions asked, as I recall, but really the question that was asked, the leading up to right before it was shot, was basically asking Charlie Kirk, do you even know how many mass shootings there are? And Charlie Kirk replies, are you including gang shootings with that number? And it's such a great question. I love that he even said that, because people forget about all the gang shootings that go on in the United States every day. And remember, a mass shooting is 3 people. So 3 people or more. Anything more than 2 people, I believe, is the law enforcement definition of a mass shooting. It really should be probably 2. But I think the latest definition is 3. If it's 2, don't get mad at me, but I believe they put it up to 3. Nevertheless, that happens so often in drive-by shootings. I post about a lot of gang shootings because they're mass shootings, and we just dismiss them as gang, activity, but they count in those statistics. So when you see the statistics of gang or mass shootings, included in those are all these gang shootings that happen every day. They shoot them up. Sometimes it's just gang on gang, right? A Crip versus a Blood, and he goes in, he shoots everybody up, and more than 3 people are shot. So anyway, I just wanted to be clear that that was the question that was really asked, and that's what Charlie answered. I think his last words were words to the effect of, well, do you mean including gangs or not including gangs? And that's when the shot rang out, I believe. But he talks about a transgender question being asked. I think it was a little bit before that. But I can review it again, but that's my best recollection. Okay, so after he then shoots, right at this point, he runs and jumps off the roof. Many of us have seen that because law enforcement released that, again, pleading for help. So he makes a very controlled fall. It's not that long of a distance. First of all, he doesn't just jump from the roof. He kind of sleeks himself down. He's a tall guy. He's about 6 foot tall. He sleeks down, and then there's a little extension out of the wall that he puts a foot down to sort of break his fall slowly. So you can picture it's kind of slow. And then he jumps down. For those of you who haven't seen it, where was the gun at that time? Yes, he had the gun with him. He throws the gun down, I believe, I believe he threw it down, and I believe that's what they said. And then he jumps down. And then he runs to the northeast end of the campus. And that is this little wooded area that some of you have seen. This is where the towel and the weapon, the rifle, it's a 30-06 Mauser rifle. I've talked a lot about it. In this, we heard today that he had a $2,000 scope on it. I don't know if that was true. I don't know if it wasn't true. But according to what Robinson said to his lover, he said he's upset, basically. He's like, what am I going to do? Because I couldn't go back and get it, so I can't return the gun to my grandpa, is what he's all talking back and forth to his lover about. I need to return this, and I wasn't able to go back and get it. And then he says, gosh, he had a $2,000 scope on there, which also answers a lot of questions. If he really had like a Leopold, which is what I have, the nicest, best scopes you can get. That's just my opinion. Everybody has an opinion, believe me. That's a reasonable price point. No wonder he made the shot. His grandfather probably had it perfectly, the elevation and the windage, perfect. I mean, all you're looking at is literally this. And all you have to do is put this on your target. That's all you have to do. This is not complicated. And the distance, as I've mentioned before, a Mauser actually can shoot over a mile. I'm going to post this because one of the people I met at the shooting event I was at, it was to raise money for victims of sexual assault and domestic violence, but particularly sexual assault victims, very specifically. One of the husbands of the woman running the nonprofit, one of the women running the thing, her husband is a quadriplegic, but they have a gun rigged because he has some motion in his arm and he can pull back. So they have a trigger rig like this and he can pull back. All this is to say, while we were there, he was just in a competition and they were all from Utah. And this particular range that they go to has a milk jug. Over a mile away, he shot this milk jug because he had a good sight system. Talked about that, it's critical, and a good rifle. So this shot that was taken at 150 yards, just to please put that in perspective, I guarantee I could put a rifle in any of your hands and you could shoot at that distance really accurately. And remember, he wasn't that accurate. He was shooting here for the head. Anybody who thinks that that wasn't what he was going for, that he was, I've seen people that have never been snipers. I was a sniper in Houston. If anybody thinks that, they were trying to go for the chest, his hands are up like mine are, talking. He had a microphone. You do not shoot for the chest. There's too big of a chance that even if you impact, it's not going to be a lethal shot. You could hit a lot of different things other than the heart. If you hit the heart, you're good, but the heart is small and there's a lot of other areas. So if he would have been aiming at the chest, probably would have dropped lower. But I believe he was aiming for the head and he dropped either because his elevation was off. He could have slightly jerked the trigger. That happens all the time in pistol shooting. And it can happen in rifle shooting as you anticipate. In any event, all bullets, when you shoot them out of a gun, they go like this. They go up and then they come down. And so the elevation has to be perfectly lined up with your sight system. The bottom line is it was still a lethal shot. It looks like to me, it actually hits the carotid artery likely because you see the blood just projectile out. I'm not trying to get too gross here, as opposed to a jugular vein, a vein that's in that area. I don't know. It could have been a vein, just a vein, but it seemed like it was, if I were there, I could tell you because arterial blood is so different from venal blood. Just as a tactical medic, I'm speaking from that space. So anyway, everybody online is very concerned about the projectile, right? So a cartridge means the projectile plus the casing. Okay. When you say a cartridge, cartridge, projectile plus the casing. Casing means the projectile is gone. So everybody is asking online. I see it over and over, and a lot of people have been asking me, and I've been wanting to actually talk about this. The soft part, going through here in your neck, I think that round, that 5.56 round, 2.23 round, just right through, most likely, the round he had, that 30-06 round, which I should have a picture up here of what they look like. But these rifled rounds, some of you might be familiar with a 223, a 5.56, a 30-06 round. They're different than how a pistol round looks. They're thin. They're very thin. They travel at a huge velocity. They have so much. I wanted to comment on this too. When a round hits, it's not just the round hitting whatever it hits that's the problem. The problem is also the reverberation, if you will, of that round hitting and possibly even tumbling, and all that means to the body. It's catastrophic. A rifle round is catastrophic to the human body, particularly where he hit. Do I think that round is in his neck? I really don't think it is. I think it would have exited, because understanding how fast that round continued and would continue through this soft, area where it looked to me like he was hit, which was the soft area in the neck I think he was hit on, as he was facing out, he was hit, as I recall, on the left side of his Adam's apple. So in any event, I think it would have gone through. People are asking about that. That's something they're holding back. They've got a lot of ballistic work to do. I'm going to have a ballistics expert, tool mark expert, firearm expert in terms of not marksmanship and shooting, but an expert regarding the weapon on tomorrow night, 5:00, right here on Break the Case. I'm so excited to have her on. I called right after this happened. She wasn't able to join me tonight, but she's able to join tomorrow, because I want her to talk about particularly the ballistics of this round and the likely result of what it did interiorly, the likely result of the exit, the likely situation that they will be able to make an analysis of whether that projectile came from the Mauser 30-06 they discovered. That is going to be important for law enforcement to do. And I'm going to ask her about the chances of that being recovered. So I'm excited to have her on. All right. The prosecutor then went into, and again, I'm sort of regurgitating, summarizing this press conference and what was said. It was really just the prosecutor that spoke. He then talks about the etched inscriptions that were in the rounds that were recovered. Now, I want to be clear on this. The inscriptions were what was recovered in that towel with the rifle was particularly what was recovered was one casing. It was funny. He called it something else other than that, but it was the spent casing. So in other words, they actually he took the casing with him. So in a bolt action gun, if you can imagine, you actually take the bullet, the cartridge, I'll call it the cartridge because it's the projectile with the casing. You put it in, and then there's this little lever, and you bolt action it forward, and then it goes into the firing, you chamber it, goes into the chamber. And then a firing pin hits it when you pull the trigger, hits the primer that's on the back of the bullet that then ignites the projectile out of the casing. And then the casing is spent from the gun right there. It stays right where you shot. It doesn't go with the bullet. The bullet goes separate. for those of you who aren't firearms people. So in any event, he took the trouble of picking that up and taking it. He also had 3 other bullets, cartridges, I should call them. So 3 cartridges, meaning bullets that had never been fired, and the one he fired. I think he had them because he thought, well, if I miss, if I don't get it in 4, I'm not going to do anymore. You kind of have to hand do this. This is not a semi-automatic weapon where you put in a magazine and it feeds. That is not what you have with this weapon. This is a bolt action, so it's a manual action. And so that's also great evidence, though, right? Because they never found a cartridge on the roof. What they did find on the roof, he goes into this, is they found where he laid down. You know, this full impression of somebody laying in the prone position as they're shooting, right? Face up against the rifle being held. You know, you've got your elbow down here. You're laying down in this prone, meaning on your stomach position. So they have that because of this gravel rooftop. So he talks about that too, you know, and they're going to be able to sort of measure that and show that it wasn't a 5 foot tall, you know, guy. It's going to probably, I would guess, measure up, generally speaking, to what formation he would make laying down, the general length and so forth. So anyway, on the cartridge or on the casings of each one, so 3 of them had bullets. 1 of them was just the casing. There were words written on the unspent cartridges. One said, "Hey, fascist." Gosh, I was writing so fast when I was taking note. Catch. That's right. Hey, fascist, catch, with all the arrows going up and down. I don't know if I posted on this before. I meant to post verbatim. I have this tweet written up. I just don't think I've sent it because I need to look it over again. But with the arrows going up and down, obviously to me, he was considering Charlie Kirk a fascist. That's what he's trying to say. That's how I see it. And you know, catch, like throwing this bullet at you, catch. El Bella Bella Ciao, and it goes on, but it's like, oh, Bella Bella Ciao Ciao. And that has to do with what was said apparently in Italy regarding fascism, right? When Mussolini during World War II, Bella Bella Ciao apparently relates to this fascist talk, Bella Bella Ciao. That's the meaning, if you will, or the inference, probably a better word. And then on another one of the cartridges, it said, "If you read this, you're gay." Now, why do I think he wrote that? To me, this is what my takeaway was, because he was going to read it. I don't know, other than that, what he could mean. He was gay, and I think he meant that I'm going to be reading this, but we don't know. I mean, it's up to interpretation, how you all want to interpret this. But I think these messages, when you put them together, show sort of, in a way, the disorganization of the shooter's mind in lockstep with some of his thoughts about fascism and gay and so forth. And then on the bullet casing of the bullet that was actually fired, let me see if I can get exactly what was written. Something, I know it was OWO, but it was words to the effect of "no tice bow OWO." So I'm going to, if somebody knows in chat, let me know. Oh, it's interesting. Dr. Miller says Bella Ciao means beautiful goodbye, but that's not what this was. Well, it related to specifically fascism, fascist state, back to Mussolini, but that probably is the exact words, what they mean in Italian. So anyway, but this was the big one, everybody. Listen, there was DNA on the trigger of Tyler Robinson and on the weapon itself. This is so big. This is like the sheath in the Idaho 4 case. You don't have BK's, DNA on that sheath unless he was in possession of that sheath. So not only do they have the DNA on the gun, which it was his grandfather's, so the defense could try to explain that away, he had it on the trigger, everyone, on the trigger. So I think that's really big. It's obviously going to be DNA that were from, I think, one of two places: the skin cells from the friction of him holding that weapon and rubbing that trigger as he pulled back, or also sweaty hands, sweaty palms. I mean, this is a moment of a lot of perspiration would likely be going on in these circumstances. I was just, as I think I said, about 15 minutes north of Utah on the Utah-Montana border there, and it was beautiful there. It was in the 70s, so it's nice time of year there. It's not cold by any means. And remember, he went through this neighborhood and this weird gate. He did a jump onto the roof. He runs across the roof. He's down there. Now he's making what I guess he believes is the most important shot of his life. He shoots. And so it makes sense to me that DNA, I think it's huge. Will the defense argue that, oh, well, he shot that gun before, it was his grandfather's gun, it makes sense that his DNA was on it? Of course, they're going to argue that. I think from the prosecution side, it's pretty interesting to me that his DNA was on there. All right. I thought that was a big moment. Let me see. Oh, and DNA also on the cartridges. That's big. And on the casing, I believe he said, on the towel and on the rifle. So his DNA is all over because he didn't wear gloves. I've commented about this before. This was no professional. It was obvious from the very beginning. His face was exposed. He only had glasses on. He had a cap on. He had a very recognizable shirt on. He didn't cover his arms. He didn't cover his hands. He didn't use gloves. I mean, he was as novice of a criminal, of an assassin, as you could find. Unfortunately, any moron could take that shot from that distance and likely make it. That's the sad part about this. So just terrible. Anyway, he goes on to say, meaning the prosecutor, about turning himself in. He was convinced by a family friend that was a former sheriff's officer, and I think also was a minister, to turn himself in. We've known about this. We've never heard until now, at least maybe I hadn't, how much involved mom was. That mom was the first one to recognize him, that mom went to the father, that the father sought the help of the friend because he was suicidal. He said, I don't want to be caught. I don't want to be turned in. I'd rather kill myself. I'm actually a little bit surprised he didn't, a little bit, but I guess that shows me that he still had some connection to his family and to people he loved. All right, going on through this press conference. Let's see. The parents also, not only did they recognize their son, which makes all the sense in the world, but they also recognized that rifle. Remember, that rifle was in the family. They actually, what the prosecutor says was or that the rifle was given to the son. But the son makes it realize, and we're going to go over this in his later writings, that he needed to give it back. I mean, what are they going to say? It's my grandfather's gun. So that is a little contradictory, what they said about the parents said the rifle was given to him, but maybe they mean physically, like the grandpa said, here, you can use my rifle. So because the son seems to think he needs to get the rifle back. Let's see. So the question was asked, why? Why did he say he did this, at least from the parents' point of view? And they actually had a discussion about Charlie Kirk. And during that discussion with the parents, their son apparently said he just has too much hate. again, the irony and all of that, all the people who want to murder somebody because they say they're too hateful. Doesn't hate mean, when you put it into action, anybody can say anything. By the way, I never heard anything hateful out of Charlie Kirk's mouth, but that's neither here nor there. I just find it so ironic that somebody got killed for being hateful by somebody who hated him so much as to kill him. All right, continuing with the evidence. The roommate, they confirmed, is the lover. Not just the roommate, they became lovers. That's what the parents said, and that's what the investigation showed. You could tell in their text messages, they call each other love, my love. So it was definitely romantic. That had been argued back and forth. It was a romantic relationship. All right. So he tells his roommate, he being the shooter or alleged shooter, he reaches out to his roommate, his lover, and he says, stop everything you're doing. I need you to go look underneath the keyboard. I think the keyboard to a computer, right? So the lover looks under, and I'm going to call him the same thing every time so it's not confusing as to, well, is there a roommate or is there a lover? It's one person. He's the roommate / lover. He tells him to go look under the keyboard. So he looks under the keyboard and there's a note. And in the note, and I'm going to paraphrase, but you can see here, I took copious notes on, following as fast as people talk, what was on the note. Quote, I had the opportunity to take out Charlie Kirk and I'm going to take it. So he writes that. Then there's a exchange of text messages that follow between, after he gets the note. The lover says, are you kidding me? Like, you're going to take it? What are you joking around? And the lover says, you're not the one who did this, right? For all of those saying that the lover's involved and the lover knew, that by this evidence shows the lover didn't know before Tyler Robinson texted him and told him to look under that keyboard. We can tell this because we have the text exchange. So I think the lover, from what I see here, is in the clear. In fact, he seems shocked about the whole thing. So the lover says, you weren't, quote unquote, you weren't the one who did it, right? And then Robinson says, I plan to grab the rifle. And then the lover goes back and says, why? Why did you do it? And then Robinson says, enough hate. Some hate can't be negotiated, or words to that degree. Some, hate isn't negotiable or something like that. In other words, like, he was never going to get Charlie Kirk to change because Charlie Kirk was so hateful. So that was why he had to kill him. He said, the roommate asked, how long have you planned it, or something to that degree. And then the Robinson says, I planned it over a week. So many of us had wondered how long he had planned it. And I should have mentioned that the parents said that they talked about Charlie Kirk, that he was going to hold these debates he does, prove me wrong debates, in Orem at the university there. So was that the first he ever knew about it? It sounded like it to the parents, that they were discussing this, and that, in fact, Tyler said words to the effect, well, that's a stupid place to have it. And that's when he said to the parents, how much disdain he had for Charlie Kirk. And so that seems to be when he learned about Charlie Kirk's plan to be there. And then his lover says, well, wait a minute, I thought they arrested somebody else or a couple other people. And that's when Robinson says, oh my gosh, they arrested an old man. And then he also says, and they arrested some other guy because, something about like similar clothes as me or something like that. But basically he's saying it wasn't those guys. When the roommate or when the lover is trying to say, hey, I thought it was those guys. And then he talks about how he changes outfits. He's saying all this to the roommate. He talks about, oh my gosh, how am I he seems very upset with losing this rifle. He left the rifle in the towel. These are quotes he says. It was, sorry, on the casing that was left from the projectile that killed Charlie Kirk, it was notice bulge UWU, I believe. Notice bulge UWU. That was what was written on there. Sorry to digress. Because the reason this comes out in these conversations with his lover, or this text message string with his lover, is because he says, it's weird. He's monitoring the news as he is discussing this. And he's basically monitoring the news, and he says, boy, if they come out with the fact that I wrote notice bulge UWU or wrote on these casings, that then I'll know they've got it. I'll know they've got the towel, because he's still trying to figure out a way to go back and get the towel and go back and get the rifle. And this is how ignorant he is. He says, if he can get the rifle, then they basically can't catch him. There'll be nothing to connect him to the crime. And I just wanted to point out here, this guy is literally an idiot. This is no hardcore criminal. This is nobody who knows how to cover up a crime. He's certainly not a true crimer on this channel, because you guys would have done a much better job of covering up a crime. This is just unbelievable to me how idiotic he was in terms of his plan, in terms of covering up the crime. But I will say he was good enough to make the crime happen. But I attribute that in large part to the security staff not doing their job, not looking up on the roof. All it would have taken was one of the security guys checking the rooftops, seeing him up there, and this wouldn't have happened. They would have quickly got Charlie Cook off the stage, and he wouldn't have had a target left. So it's not this mastermind like some people are saying, and that he's, an operative for Israel. I saw that at one point, or that, he's paid millions of dollars to do this, check his bank account. Forget all of that. This is just a college kid dropout, but extremely smart. He was an honors kid, like a 4.0, smart kid, academically, not smart when it came to common sense, doing a crime like this, that was a radical. And that the FBI, if you look on the number one concern of the FBI, always has been and probably always will be, are radical extremists, homegrown radical extremists, typically terrorists. It's one of the number one threats to your being and my being. I've posted a lot about nobody's safe. And I say that because you just never know. You can be the guy that drives the ice cream truck and it says Ben and Jerry. And some radical looks up Ben and Jerry and they find out they supported some cause that you don't believe in, and they try to blow it up. I mean, they tried to blow up Fox News just a couple of days ago. And thank God it didn't go off, but they've been indicted by the FBI. Literally, they're there covering this case. So no one's safe when you have radicals out there that are trying to make a statement and that have this much hate. All right. This is also, the prosecutor talks about, he says there's a $200 or $2,000 scope on it. And that explains a lot if he did have a high quality scope on there. They talk about the rifle's unique. Let's see. And about, again, I've talked about turning himself in, about the father and the former sheriff convinces him, who I also believe was a minister, about turning himself in. Oh, I wanted to mention this. I find it very interesting that he decided to write on those cartridges. I think he's a copycat. I think he saw what Luigi Mangione did, the hate he had against Brian Thompson for, being a successful CEO of a company, because remember what Luigi did wasn't just about the healthcare system. He was trying to make this huge statement against, CEOs and those that are profiting off people. And so if you look, though, at what they did, they're very similar crimes. People who are just absolutely innocent sitting ducks, have no chance to fight back. Luigi shot Brian Thompson in the back within just a short distance. Everybody on that case said, see, he's a hired gunman, he's a trained professional. No, he trained himself well enough to be able to shoot, at a close distance. He's no marksman. Remember, he missed him several times too. And then in this case, you have somebody good enough with a good enough scope and a good enough rifle to do the job. But again, I think he missed and that bullet dropped, and it's terrible. It couldn't have missed right or left. I thought this was interesting. They said when they went to his house, not only did they find more cartridges with the writings on them, which also, again, ties him back to all of this, but they found bullet holes in his home. Now, that confuses me, but a guy with this lack of common sense, it made me wonder, was this guy, using his walls as target practice, not understanding that a round like this is going to carry on well through a wall? Potentially, unless he had a brick structure that he was in. If it was drywall and wood siding, a round like that would go straight through all of that. Brick or concrete block, it wouldn't necessarily, wouldn't go through it, but I don't know. But they said they had bullet holes in Tyler's home. I can't wait to hear more about that. So that's what they went through. From A to Z, there were a lot of questions asked. This prosecutor is so good. He's like, no, I'm not going to answer that. I'm not going to answer that. I already answered that. And then they got him off the stage. I think it's really important to denote that there is a preliminary hearing, again, a mini trial that's going to happen. We're not going to see what happened on the Idaho case where they had a grand jury. We're not going to see an indictment. We're not going to see that. That's typically what's done in most states, and certainly at the federal level. They're not going to do that. They're going to have a preliminary hearing. So we're all going to be tuned into that. There was no date set for that. Remember, we still have arraignment to go. And then at arraignment, they will set a preliminary hearing date. And I would look for that to be down the road, because they have a lot of evidence already that they're going to turn over, likely for them to look at. One last thing I wanted to address is, will the FBI, will there be federal charges? I tell you what, like in Luigi's case, I never understood why the state charged him when the federal case is so strong with the federal nexus of crossing state lines. It's a no-brainer. The federal government had the death penalty. New York didn't have the death penalty. It never made any sense. And then, of course, we saw today, for those of you who don't know, that the murder one was taken off the plate and has been removed. There's no more murder one charge against Luigi Mangione on the state level, but on the federal level, everything is still moving on. It's death penalties on the table. In this case, I think it would be a bad idea for a U.S. attorney to charge it. Let me tell you why. There's no venue. There was no state lines crossed. He came from Utah. He was in Utah. It was all in Utah. So no state lines crossed. The murder does not fall under these protected issues under one of the murder violations. I'm just going to read this off to y'all. Okay. I thought I had screenshotted this, but particularly, here we go. The murder wasn't done because of race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, or disability. That's what's protected. That's what's protected. Race, color, religion, national origin, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, and disability. In other words, if the government can't prove that he made this shot for these reasons, it really is out of the statute. And it specifically, as you can see in that list I read, it does not say political ideology, political party, political leanings. It doesn't say anything about that. So if you murder somebody for any of those reasons I read, then it falls under federal jurisdiction. Could they add something like this in to deter people from committing political type assassinations? Obviously, if you're in the government and you're killed, you're assassinated, then you're covered. But unless you're one of these protected groups, you're not covered. Should that change? I kind of think it should. I think that if you, like a Martin Luther King or obviously a Charlie Kirk, if you have political ideas and things you're espousing, but you're not, president, vice president, congressperson, and you're assassinated, should that be a reason that it can go federal? I really hope that a new law, maybe that will be the Charlie Kirk law, where they do something like that so people are protected, and it becomes a federal violation if you're assassinated for your political views. This country's getting crazy. All right, I went through a lot. I'm going to glance really quickly at chat because I know I talked way too long. Oh my gosh, it's 4:21. Sorry, I've gone an hour. Okay, let me just look to see if let's see. Oh, thank you so much. Erdlich Kanal, thank you. It sounds German. Let me know if I'm wrong. Thank you for that. And God bless you too. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. I know this was last minute. I'm going to go through and read everything that rolled through chat here. And I always like to take a look at it. I'll be posting a lot probably coming up on my feed about this case and others tomorrow. We're going to have that tool mark expert in, and we're going to talk with them regarding this bullet that was fired. Just understand there's a lot more evidence. This is what they touched on and were willing to release to the public. Until next time.
Want to break the case with Jennifer Coffindaffer even more? Then press subscribe right now and join Jen on YouTube. Just search Break the Case with Jennifer Coffindaffer now.